Okay, so next steps are we want to open up these projects and try to merge together some of these recorded animations that we've created through Mixamo. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up um, the T-pose to start. Okay. Okay. And what you have here is going to be all the rig inside of the model and then the model itself. All of our textures are there. Everything's sort of ready to go. There's no animation along with this. It's just one frame in this sort of T-pose. What we do want to do is just sort of like highlight this. If you do Option G or Alt G, depending upon if you're on PC or Mac, it'll create a null. And we can just label this study pose. Okay, and then we're gonna pop in the rest of our models as well, which I already have open, but you're just gonna open up each one individually and same sort of thing. We're gonna go to the walking backwards. Okay, here we can preview this. So we have our walking backwards. All right, and then same thing. I grouped that into a project and labeled it study walking backwards. And then also our dying, which is that falling sequence into the scene. Okay, so what we're going to do is copy and paste each one of these into that first T-pose. So I'm just going to select it in the Object Manager, copy it, go to the T-pose, paste that in, and then grab the walking backwards, copy it, and paste that in. All right, and then I'm just going to arrange this into the hierarchy. So we have the T-pose first, then we have the walking backwards, and then we have the dying. So if we actually play this, well, it's only got one frame right now. So let's drag this out. Let's actually make our whole project bigger, maybe like 200 frames. Okay, and now if we play this, you see them all happening sort of simultaneously. All right, so what we want to do to begin with is kind of like just basically kind of align these, right? So what we can do is go to our front view. That's a good starting point. And we notice that let's start with our T-pose. The T-pose looks pretty good, pretty centered. I'm just gonna drop it down so it lands on that 0 mark. Okay, then I'll just hide this one and I'll go to the walking backwards one. I'm just gonna bring that down so at least one of the feet are touching. Okay, and I'm going to move it over to the center a little bit more. That looks good. Hide that one. And then the dying pose, same sort of thing. It's a little bit crouched. It's definitely centered, which is good. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. And then I'm going to look at it on the right view as well. And let's just line these up. Let's turn all these back on. Okay, so the T-pose is there. That looks good. The walk back is here. So I'm going to move this forward. So it starts in the middle of that one, which looks pretty good. And then dying, we're going to have to line that one up later, but it looks pretty good for now. Okay, so I've got all those lined up. And now what I'm going to do is just open these up, each one of these up, and we're going to apply some tags to these. So what you want to do is open up your file. You want to have the first one, the T-pose. We're just going to select the rig and go to animate and add motion clip. Okay, so you can label this as well. So I'm just going to call this study T, and actually I'm going to make it more than one frame. I'm going to make it 10 frames for that and just hit OK. And then on the hips, same sort of thing. Go to animate, add motion clip. This already has the full motion built in, so that's good. I'm just going to hit OK. Notice it's giving us the ghost of the position it's going to end at, which is great. And then, excuse me, we will add it to the dying pose. Okay. All right. So I've got those motion system expressions added to all 3 of these, which is great. And then we can click on, let's just click on this first one and just click open in timeline so we can start to see what we've got here. All right. Whoops, let's see, let's do that again. So open TL, that'll give us our timeline. And what you should see is that first T-pose right here. And then we have our study walk and our study dying, those elements in here as well. Now, I labeled these when I brought those in, and that's why they show up as such. I forgot to label the T-pose, but that's okay. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we are actually, now that those are in there, we can hide the walk back and the dying. I'm gonna hide that in the renderer and the editor. Okay, so now we have, so far we just have our T-pose. Now what we want to do with this is blend the poses together. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Okay, you can do that, or you can actually hit the 2 button and then drag and it will shrink it down. I'm just gonna move this over. And then over here from our menu, we could just grab the walk back, the study walk, and just add this in. And wherever you place it, it will have that animation here. So what we'll see happen is that we'll drag this over and then we'll get that walk back happening. That is strange. I haven't seen it do that before. Getting all kinds of new fun stuff happening as we go through this project. Okay, I figured it out. I have to hide the hierarchy and not the individual ones. So we're gonna hide that. And we're gonna hide this, and then we don't have that visualization of those things going back in space. Okay, so now what we have, maybe we still have a little bit left over, it looks like. Oh well. Oh, because I have this on. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we've got our scene cleared. That's good. So we've got this jump from the T-pose. It jumps quickly to the walk back. And what we can do is we can see how these work just abutted. So that's the first thing to try. What happens if they're just abutted? So it's pretty quick, but it's actually not terrible. Or you could overlap it. And if you overlap, you're going to get this little blue curve, which is interpolating from one pose to the next. And so we're going to see it kind of slides a little bit. You can see it sliding there, which isn't terrible, but it's not the greatest. I'm going to leave it for now. I think it's fine. What I'm going to do, though, is close this menu a little bit closer. There we go. And let's see. On that motion, I'm going to go to this blending, and I'm just going to do linear. Okay, so that way I get a little bit smoother transition there as we go. So let's see. It's really quick, but it's a little bit of something. I think that helps a little bit. Okay, so then we've got that motion of it walking backwards, which is good. So I'm going to go to here again. I'm just going to move this over, and then I'm going to drag in this dying clip here. Okay, and you'll notice that what happens here is as it walks back, suddenly it jumps to the front again, right? And then we have this sort of dying. So this position is in the wrong place. And a couple of things that we can do. So we can see where this ends in the timeline. So I'm just going to scrub out of here. And, there's a couple of different ways to do this. What I was struggling with in class was that one of the functions was not working properly. So there's a couple of ways to do this. But basically, I'm going to go to this side view. And I'm going to, in the timeline, actually, I'm going to click on this. And then that's gonna open up this menu in the attributes manager. I'm gonna go to advanced, and I'm just gonna do create pivot. Okay, and what that's gonna do is drop in this pivot object. And this is where the motion is starting, right? So we can see where this motion is starting, and we can see where our other one is ending. So what I'm gonna do is, in this right view, I'm just going to take this and drag it, and it's not, this is not lined up with our scene, which is a bummer, but it's okay. We're just going to bring this over and move it into position right about here, so these feet kind of line up a little bit. All right, and I'm also going to look at it in the front view to make sure that I'm aligned correctly. And I'm a little off center here, so I'm just going to move this. I'm going to take this little handlebar here and move this over so that the skeleton frames are lined up pretty much there. Okay, so that is going to help a lot because we, if we preview this now, let's see what happens. All right, so we're, oh well, here's the thing, we have to line up our timeline better. So let's take this and butt it up against this one so there's no gap in motion. And let's see what happens when we start to play this through. All right, zoom out a little bit more. Okay, stops kind of abruptly, falls down, but the position is pretty good. Falls back. Yeah, pretty good position. So now let's just overlap this a little bit. We're just going to drag this over so we get that interpolation to happen and scrub through a little bit and see what we can do with that. It's a little bit of a drift there, which isn't great, but we'll kind of drag that forward. It's not too bad. The legs, that looks pretty good. It's a little bit of a drift, but it's not terrible. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit more. And let's see how that works. It's pretty good. Places feet, drifts a little, let's make a little less. So I'm just kind of like playing around, seeing how that motion works. I think that's pretty good because it's a pretty quick clip. So let's watch this whole thing through from start to finish. Okay, walks backwards, hits something, and falls down. All right, so it's a pretty good combination. So with this in mind, you know, you can definitely set up multiple different clips, multiple different frames, kind of bringing them together, different Mixamo sequences for one continuous sort of motion. And what I had created earlier was something like this. So this is one that's more sequenced. I've got this very sharp, menacing arrow that this poor figure does not see. And as they walk back, they go through the arrow and bam, that was it. Kind of a reverse blow to the head. So questions about this, please send them along. It's a little bit finicky. What I found about this, in order to get this to animate properly, I actually had to go to my original animation, right? All of this stuff I then put into, you know, you can go to object and you can go group objects into a null and call this study action. And then I copied this into a new file to be able to animate other things into it. So if you have trouble, like if you wanted to add a cube in here, and well, it's probably going to work now because I'm Murphy's Law, of course. But if I wanted to animate this cube in this sequence, it's not animating, right? I can't move the timeline and have this animate. And something has to do with that timeline sequence. If anyone out there knows what it is, please let me know. But the solution to doing something like this is, again, to group everything together, copy it, put it in a new sequence. And now, of course, if I bring a cube in, right, I can keyframe it. So there's some weird hierarchy that happens with our motion in this scene when we are, you know, so there we go. We've got two motions happening. Anyway, if you get into trouble, contact me, let me know. But there is some issues with bringing those two things together. Grouping it into a null seems to be the solution that helps quite a bit. All right, that's all for now. See you soon.